Hey everybody, this is Mr. Storm. In this video, we're going to talk about the for loop. Now, a for loop is a very special kind of loop. We're going to talk about what loops are, how they're used in JavaScript, and what the for loop specifically does. So first off, what is a loop? Well, a loop is essentially a programming feature that allows you to repeat a set of instructions over and over again until a specific condition is met. So for example, instead of writing out something like this over and over and over again to, I guess, display every index inside of an array. Arrays are something that you're going to learn in HTML5 applications development. But instead of writing the same statement or relatively the same statement over and over again, we could write something like this. This is a for loop. It starts with the keyword for, and then inside the loop we have something called an iterator. We're going to set that equal to 0, meaning we're going to start at 0. And then while I is less than cars.length, basically meaning the length of the array called cars, while I is less than the length of that array, then we're going to produce this value, basically that statement that we had up there. And then we're going to increase the value of I every single time. So this is pretty easy to do. Now, there are many different kinds of loops that we can use. The for loop is essentially what we just talked about. You have a for in loop, which loops through the properties of an object. You have the for of, which loops through the values of an iterable object. A while loop loops through a block of code while a specific condition is true. And then you have a do while loop, which loops through a block of code while a specific condition is true. The difference is in a do while loop, you run the code first and then check to see if it still meets the condition. So a for loop is very simple. It has 3 separate statements within the for loop. Statement 1 is executed once before the execution of the code block. So this statement here is executed first. Then statement 2 is the condition that we're looking for to see if we're breaking out of our loop yet or not. And then statement 3 is executed every time after the code block is executed. Okay. So for example, in here, I equals 0, we're only setting I equal to 0 before we start looping through this loop. We're going to set it right away, and we're never going to run it, or we're never going to set I equal to 0 again. Then in the middle, this is the condition, while I is less than 5. Okay, so while I is less than 5, we're going to continue to loop, continue to run this code here. Now, here is what we do after each loop of the code is executed. So the way this would work is for the first iteration of the loop, we would change the value of this text variable to say the number is, and then I would be 0, because I equals 0 on the first loop. And then when that loop is done, when this statement is done, we would increase I by 1. So I becomes 1. So then is I less than 5? Well, I is 1, so 1 is less than 5. So yeah, so then the text would be the number is 1. And we just keep going through that until I is less than, or until I is equal to or greater than 5. So normally you would use statement 1 to initialize the variable. So create a variable and initialize that variable. Statement 1 is essentially optional. You can initialize many values in statement 1 separated by a comma if you'd like. I generally don't do this. It just makes your for loops a bit more complicated. I just kind of make sure that I always use this structure, right? Now again, you can leave statement 1 blank if you want. If you've already created your I variable somewhere else and you've initialized them, that variable with some kind of data, then you don't actually need to create that statement 1. But again, I always create statement 1. Now statement 2 will allow us to determine if a condition is met. If you get rid of statement 2, you have to have a break inside of your loop somewhere. I always include statement 2 because you run the risk of creating something called an infinite loop, basically a loop that never ends, and you'll just continue to use up computer resources until, the heat death of the universe, or until the computer crashes, or whatever else happens, right? We want to stay away from infinite loops as much as possible. And statement 3, again, you can leave out statement 3 if you're going to basically replace statement 3 with some kind of statement within the loop. Again, I always include statement 3. In this example, they've left out statement 1 and statement 3. In that case, you might as well just use an easier structure of a loop. The for loop has that all in one statement right up here for us, which saves us some time and we don't have to write out a bunch of extra stuff. All right, so the for in loop, you can use the for in loop, which basically says for X in person. So if we have a person object here, and that person has a bunch of different values inside of it, we can say for X in person. So for however many things in person, we're going to keep looping. We can also use the for of. So the for of would be looping through an array. So every value of data inside of an array for X of cars, then we can do that. Let's see. That's pretty much it. So the while loop and do while loops, those are, you can learn about those later on. All we're concerned with for this project is the for loop itself. So hopefully this cleared up a little bit about what a for loop is and how it works. In the project, you'll see we're going to use a for loop to handle some part of the execution of our project. All right, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll see you next time. Peace.